Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Back with a Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. This is Dark Shadows episode 94, written by Ron Sproat, directed by John Sedgwick. And I love how this starts. It starts in the Blue Whale. Carolyn and Joe are having their date. So Ron, who is writing this episode, is answering the question, do Carolyn and Joe go on a date? Yes, they do. They go on a date at the Blue Whale. What I really love too about this episode, there are a lot of extras in here, not just at the Blue Whale, but at the restaurant in Bangor where Vicky is with Frank Gardner. So, meanwhile, while we're at the Blue Whale here, Carolyn is talking to Joe, and Carolyn tells Joe that Victoria Winter saw the ghost of Bill Malloy. And that's how they lean into the entrance here, too. Carolyn did tell Joe, hey, I wanted to date. And they're going to have the conversation about them, how she wants to be with him. But there's going to be later conversations that cause Joe to question this. Ron Sproat is a very, very terrific writer. He's one of my favorite DS writers of all time. He's a very soap opera style writer, just like Francis Swan and Art Wallace are. But I think what Ron does really well is, now did he plant the seeds that the lawyers that Frank's dad knew about Victoria Winters? No, that was planted by Francis Swan. But what Ron does really well, outside of planting seeds of his own, which I will explain what he plants here, he adds a lot of fuel to the already lit fire. And not only does he add fuel, he dumps gasoline on this son of a bitch. And he does it so well. Same thing. And he does the same thing with Carolyn and Joe here. So I love his consistency in this episode because you're stoking the fire to its, not quite to its tipping point, but beneath that. And you're showing this range of emotion of these characters. And great job by the actors and actresses bringing out that emotion too. I'm not going to sit here and just give Ron Sproat all the credit. But Ron does deserve credit for writing this episode. He's going to be taking over some writing duties, for a long, long while. And I love how John Sedgwick shoots this too. He has a perfect range of pulling the camera back and showing you who's there, and going in what the focus is of the actors, the main characters who are playing them. But I love how he shows who is around them and what's around them. That's something John Sedgwick doesn't get enough credit for with his direction, the pullback of the camera. You also have in this episode, when they cut to Bangor for the first time, Frank is promising Vicky to help her, or he's promising her she'll help. He'll help. Sorry, and he's really determined to really help her, but he also likes her. He's very much. This is your first real inkling of, not this episode, this is really your first full-fledged character who actually is fully, outside of Burke a bit, attracted to Victoria Winters. I would say more Frank Gardner is focused on wanting an actual relationship with Vicky Winters, more so than what Burke has been. Burke is busy playing games with Carolyn at times and trying to destroy the Collins family. Not that Burke isn't her friend, doesn't want to help her. He does, but again, he doesn't always have time to do that either. whereas Frank Gardner wants to help her in more ways than one will say. I talked about stoking the fire. Another good job of stoking the fire by Ron here is making sure to write Maggie in this episode and get Catherine. If Catherine Lee Scott, you have David Ford, Sam Evans, and Carolyn invites them to sit down. That's right, Carolyn invites them to sit down, and Maggie has a very lovely dress on, which looks like a dress you would wear for a date. And you want to talk about the most awkward sit down in early Dark Shadows episodes? This is it. This is it. How the four actors are sitting together makes it feel like the most awkward sit down in early DS episodes. After 93 episodes, you want to talk about the most awkward sit down? This is it. The most awkward sort of four people in one place or four people at one table right here. Not Burke and Collinwood, not Bert talking to Roger, not Bert talking to Liz. Sam Evans, Maggie Evans, Carolyn Colin Stoddard, and Joe Haskell. And what Ron Spread is trying to tell you here is and hint you a bit without overdoing it, is this is not going to get less awkward. It's just going to get more and even some intensity. And the actors and actresses do a great job of selling. But what I more love is Catherine Lee Scott's character's composure. She's nervous, but she's more wanting her dad. Okay, if we're gonna leave, let's leave. You don't need to drink it much, because she doesn't want her dad to get drunk in front of Carolyn and Joe, because she gets embarrassed by that. And is she wanting to leave because of Joe being with Kevin? Yes, but she also isn't lying when she says, "Hey, I have to open the shop at 6:00, the cafe at 6:00." This woman does have a day job after all. She doesn't sit at home living with her mother. She's not rich. She's a working woman. So, but Sam says, "Let me grab one more," and Maggie says, "Just one more." And Joe said, "Hey, I want to dance with you." And she talked about Carolyn. She had already danced once before. She's like, I want to dance with you. She goes, "You didn't have to bark at me as they're dancing." He goes, "Okay, why'd you do that? Why'd you invite them to sit down?" "I was just being nice. I was just showing Maggie there's no hard feelings." "Is that all?" I mean, is that? She goes, "Are you interrogating me?" He goes, Okay. And so they come back. Before we get into the explosion, if you will, we go back to Bangor. And that's where the only two really sets we get here. We get the Bangor set, and we get the Blue Whale setting. There's no other setting in this episode, but it works here. You get the mention of Collinwood, you get the mention of Bill Mully's ghost, you get the mention that Carolyn made it back to her house. I'll get back into that here in a moment. Frank's dad arrives at the dinner between his son and Vicky, and they're talking, and she goes, "I just don't think you should get your hopes up," because Frank says, I found Hanscom, and there's some Hanscoms here." And Frank's dad says, "Yeah, there are a lot of Hanscoms here. You shouldn't really get your hopes up." And Frank picks up on his dad's attitude towards Vicky. He's like, "Aren't you taking kind of a defeatist attitude?" He goes, "No, I just don't want her to get her hopes up and think this is going to happen. That you're going to find that exact person." And Frank wants to talk to his dad privately before he leaves. So as he's leaving, he talks to him. He goes, "Why? Do you have something against Vicky?" This is your sort of what Ron Sprout does here, and this is not your first inclination. Ron doesn't do that. But what Ron does is add Frank's suspicion toward his dad. That's what Ron really brings here. And it's beautifully done. It's a great probe. Do I wish this would have been given to Vicky here? Yes. Yes, I do. That's my one nitpick about this episode. I wish that would have been Vicky because Vicky already sort of privately feels this way. And she expresses it publicly more toward Burke than she does Frank or his dad. It's not Ron's decision to make, but I do wish Ron would have put the press the gas a little harder here. But overall, this is a superb episode. It's well acted, and you get a bunch of confrontations, or at least heavy conversations with Frank and his dad. But I love what Frank's dad says in this is the episode. He says it. He goes, just keep one thing in mind. Elizabeth Stoddard is our client, not Vicky Winters. And he says, what does that have to do with anything? Just keep it in mind. And it's basically Frank's dad telling him, hey, probe, but don't probe too hard. And whether Frank, I don't know if you can't really tell if Frank's picking up on that, but Frank does go back to talk to Vicky. We go back to the Blue Whale. And I love the explosiveness between Carolyn and Joe because we have Carolyn tells Maggie and Joe, because no one's seen Vicky around, Joe brings that up. Maggie brings that up. And Carolyn says, oh, she went to Bangor. Vicky saw the ghost, claims she saw the ghost of Bill Malloy. Sam is curious about this. He's also kind of suspicious, acting. What I love here is, if you forgot Sam Hall was invested into Bill Malloy's death, or Ron Sprout's going to give you a big reminder here, because as soon as he hears this, not too long, he leaves the Blue Whale and he's going to ask Joe to make sure Maggie gets home after Joe comes back from taking Carolyn home. The reason Carolyn leaves is because Joe gets mad. Oh, this is why you brought me there, because Carolyn does tell Maggie and Sam and Joe that Vicky isn't alone in Bangor. She's with Burke. Joe's not to hell. Oh, you're just playing me for a sap. I love the intensity between Carolyn and Joe here. Joel Carruthers, Nancy Barrett do a great job. Great writing. Again, great writing by Ron Sprout. She leaves. He does make sure she gets home. When she comes back, he's there with Maggie. Sam does leave. Again, he is now about to be very paranoid about Vicky, perhaps, because again, you got to put yourself in the shoes of these characters. He doesn't know Vicky saw ghosts, but he's being told it, and he's now paranoid a bit about this. Maybe he told Vicky who killed him. He's sort of wondering. So there is that. It also paints Sam a little bit of a suspect, even though we all know better that he did not kill Bill Malloy. It's a great job by Ron Sprout. And the evening ends with Maggie and Joe at the Blue Whale talking about Joe's boat. Joe is also grilling her about other ship parts and stuff, which I like. Again, really, really fun episode. Ron is a hell of a writer. Link to this episode will be in the description box. Have a nice night. Take care. Bye-bye.